Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for today's Crew News Conference with members of the Expedition 31 and Expedition 32 International Space Station crews. Joining me are NASA astronaut Joe Acaba, cosmonaut Gennady Padalka, and Sergei Revin. These three crew members will launch to the space station March 30th of this year, joining Expedition 31 crew members Oleg Kononenko, Andrei Kuipers, and Don Pettit on orbit. In May, when their Expedition 31 counterparts depart, they will remain on board, transitioning to the Expedition 32 crew. Their landing is planned for September. Let me start by introducing NASA astronaut Joe Acaba. Joe was born in Inglewood, California, and grew up in Anaheim. He attended the University of California, Santa Barbara, and obtained a bachelor's degree in geology and went on to obtain a master's in the same field from the University of Arizona. Joe's diverse background includes serving as a reservist with the U.S. Marine Corps, as well as serving 2 years in the Peace Corps in the Dominican Republic. He went on to manage a Marine Research Center in the Bahamas before becoming an educator, teaching high school and middle school math and science. He joined NASA in May of 2004 and flew his first space shuttle mission in 2009. As a mission specialist on the STS-119 crew, Joe performed 2 spacewalks, accumulating more than 12 hours of extravehicular activity. We'll now turn it over to Joe to introduce his crewmates. Joe?
It really is an honor to introduce Gennady Padalka. If I were to talk about all the things that he's done, we'd be here all day. Before Gennady was selected in 1989, he was a military pilot. He has done a long-duration mission on the Mir space station, 2 long-duration expeditions on the International Space Station. He has 585 days in space, so between all of us, I think we have 600 days in space. And I found out the other night that Gennady has done 8 EVAs or spacewalks. So not only will Gennady be the commander of our Soyuz, he's also going to be the commander of Expedition 32. Gennady?
Let me introduce our flight engineer, Sergei Revin. He's supposed to be a flight engineer on board Soyuz and on board space station. He worked for Russian Space Corporation Energia for 15 years before being assigned as our crewmate. It will be his first flight.
All right, with that, we'll start with questions here from the Johnson Space Center. If you can please approach the microphone, state your name and affiliation if you have questions.
Thank you, Mark Carreau from Aviation Week. The number of supply missions going to the space station has increased this year because of the shuttle retirement. And I just wonder if you could talk a little bit about how much the coming and going of these spacecraft sort of dominate your activities during your mission.
Sure. Right now, we currently have 3 visiting vehicles that are scheduled. In addition to that, we also have a couple of progresses that will be coming, and ATV-3 will be undocking. So a lot of our time is going to be spent on these visiting vehicles. There's a lot of preparation before they come, once the vehicle arrives, and all of the unpacking. So for us, it's really it's a pretty big hit on our time whenever we have these visiting vehicles. So it'll be we're looking forward to it, but it'll be quite a challenge.
Hi, Robert Perlman with CollectSpace.com. 2 quick questions, I guess. One, are there any spacewalks planned for this mission? And then, in terms of science, can you give an idea of how much of the crew's time is devoted to science now that assembly is complete? And what are the any key science experiments that you'll be introducing during your expedition?
We currently have 1 Russian EVA scheduled, and I'll let Gennady talk about that in a second. And we also have a U.S. EVA that, depending on the vehicle traffic and how the increment goes. And one thing about the long duration flights is there's a lot of uncertainty because of the long period of time. So we may have 1 U.S. EVA. And Gennady, if you want to talk about the Russian EVA.
Okay, as Joe mentioned, 1 EVA, Russian EVA is scheduled for us. This EVA will be conducted just to transfer Russian cargo boom from docking compartment to FGB, because we need to continue docking compartment preparation for undocking, because to this port MLM will be docked next year.
And for your second question, really the main reason that we're up there is to conduct science. And now that we are at station complete, our goal is to get the 35 hours a week of utilization or time working on experiments. So we plan on putting a lot of time into that. It's really the main focus. We've got a lot of great experiments going on. A couple that I personally like. One is the spheres, where you're looking at these kind of floating modules that we have inside and how they interact and how we might use those outside of the space station. And they'll also be used for educational purposes, so that'll be pretty neat. Robonauts up there, and I met with those guys here at the Johnson Space Center. They're doing a really great job and looking forward to working with them.
All right, our next question.
Jill Tolk with Houston Aviation Community News. A question for Joe. Since you do have that background as an educator, astronaut, and you're actually going to have time to work and play a little bit on orbit, what are some leftover tasks, or shall we say get-ahead tasks, that which you would like to do on orbit in order to reach out to students?
Yeah, I believe we spoke before my shuttle flight, and there's a similar question. And with the shuttle flight, it's really short, and they're really packed, so I didn't have a lot of time to do education stuff. Again, on a long duration mission, there's still a lot to do, but hopefully now that I'll be living up there for a longer period of time, there'll be more opportunities to do some education components. I'll be up there with Don Pettit, who is just phenomenal. He's a genius, and he has a lot of great ideas. So I'm hoping I can piggyback on some of the things that he's doing and bring those back to the students that may be watching. As an educator, I'll constantly be looking to see what we're doing and how that might be related, or how teachers might be able to use it in the classroom. So nothing really official, but having a longer period of time, I think there's a lot I'll be able to do for the students.
Yes, Jim Oberg with NBC News. I'm interested in the training you're doing because you have a space station that's been there for a while, construction complete. What kind of repair work and what kind of contingency work are you training for? Or is there any particular things that in recent months that you've added to your training because of potential issues on the station with the oxygen generator or something else? What kind of repair tasks are you prepared to do that you hope you don't have to do?
And one of the reasons why the training is so long is that we're constantly trying to prepare for those things that may happen, things that may break. So we cover a lot of that in our normal training flow. Tomorrow, I'll be in the NBL, and I'll be practicing some of the contingency EVA tasks that we might do, one being the MBSU. It's operational right now, but if it were to completely fail, that might be something that we have to do real time. So that's kind of been added to my training flow. In terms of inside the station, all of that is covered in our regular training flow, so there's nothing new that's been added for us.
And on the Russian side?
As for Russian side, currently nothing is scheduled. I mean, emergency maintenance is not scheduled, but if something comes up, yes, we are ready to repair.
You have a tradition of fixing anything.
Yes, everything is fixed, and no problem for today.
And a second question, and also like to get an answer from Novacek, our new person here. What are the special things you want to observe on the Earth? As a geologist, I'm sure you have things you want to see overhead with more spare time. And you've seen many, many things. Gennady, what are some of the things you want to see again? And is there some of the things that you look forward to seeing out the cupola? Yeah, go ahead.
This question addressed to me or Sergei?
To all three of you.
Oh, for sure.
Geolog. In our team, Joe is geologist, but I'm engineer physicist.
So you can look at the atmosphere, you can look at the ionosphere.
Да. Но несмотря на то, что
In spite of the fact that
я инженер-физик,
I am a physicist,
безусловно, интерес
of
к
course,
природе Земли.
there is a great interest towards Earth's nature, and it's inexhaustible. And we have a number of experiments that are planned during the session.
Будем наблюдать
And
за поверхностью Земли,
we are going to survey the Earth's
за
surface
слоями атмосферы,
and atmospheric layers,
за верхними слоями атмосферы,
upper atmospheric layers,
ионосферой.
ionosphere,
То есть все сферы Земли мы будем наблюдать, исследовать и получать, я думаю, достаточно интересные результаты.
We're going to research all the spheres of Earth, and I think we're going to obtain interesting results.
For me, my second education in engineering ecology, and I would like to continue some science experiments on behalf of ecology.
And don't let Sergei fool you. He's a physicist, but he's really an amateur geologist, and he spends a lot of time outdoors. So I can see Sergei spending a lot of time looking out the window and just enjoying the view. And like you said, as a geologist, I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of these landforms that I learned about in school. EarthCam, which is a neat project, it'll be pretty cool to see what the students are interested in and what they want to look at, and that'll be also fun to look at. And there's a lot of Earth observations that we do, and you've seen a lot of the pictures that came down from Mike Fossum, and they're just incredible. So I'm looking forward to seeing those for myself.
Carrie Feibel, Houston Public Radio. Can you tell us more about the Spheres science experiment? What is that? And also give us an update on Robonaut. Has it been unpacked? What kind of tasks have been done? And what will you be doing with Robonaut when you're up there?
The Spheres project, you have these, they're probably about this big, and they have a compressed gas, and they're able to locate themselves within the module. We'll have little markers throughout the module. And so by looking at those markers and how they're programmed, they can work in formation and do different tasks. So it might be very beneficial for doing a spacewalk. If there's something you want to look at outside, you can have these move to a certain location and take video of that. So we're doing a lot of practicing with that. They've done many experiments with spheres inside, but this time around, they're going to allow students to actually program what the spheres will do inside the module. So that'll be cool to see what they come up with. Robonaut, it has been unpacked, and they're in the early stages of operating it. And for me, it was, not being a designer, it was painfully slow at how long it takes them to actually do motions for it. They want to make sure everything's safe. So they have over a year just to get Robonaut checked out. So our main task will be to get Robonaut out of his closet, somewhere where he can work and observe to make sure everything's going fine. And then depending on how far they get during our increment, there's other tasks that we might be able to do. It's a pretty cool project, and I think we're going to see a lot of good results.
Thank you. Next question.
Philip Sloss with NASASpaceflight.com. Is the ISS as a test bed for analog research, is that still scheduled for your increment? And if so, could you talk about the objectives of that?
We're not doing anything specific for that. Things that we do every day, of course, we're using that for how we might work when we're doing future missions. There was talk about doing various experiments in terms of time delays, and we may try a couple of those. For example, you may have a day where you're working fairly autonomously from the ground, and instead of calling down on a frequent basis, you may do it only at the end of the day, or they may incorporate some kind of a time delay, which would simulate what we might see on the way to Mars.
Mark Carreau for Aviation Week, and I think this is for Joe. Could you sort of describe when this leg of training in the U.S. began and what you've been doing here, and what falls out next when you leave Houston, where you go and where you train up to your launch?
When you mean this leg of training most recently, or the whole?
Yeah, no, just the part where you're in Houston now and what the kind of the theme is, and then where you go from here and where and what you do up to your launch.
Sure. Yeah, this is my last training trip in Houston. I'll head out for Germany in the middle of February on my way to Russia for the launch. And so it's the last opportunity I have to learn about payloads that I haven't seen yet. There's a lot of baseline data collection for the medical community. So if you see me walking down the street, you'll probably see different things on my body, and might look like a Robonaut myself. So a lot of data collection is going on. Of course, I have my Russian crewmates here for 2 weeks, and we have some emergency training that we'll do together as a crew, but we're also going to work with the other part of our Expedition 32 crew. So we'll get all 6 of us together to work on that emergency training. So at this point, it's a lot of fine-tuning, a lot of administrative things that need to get done. But the way we train, I was a backup to Dan Burbank, so the majority of the training has been complete, and now it's just the fine-tuning stage.
This is Jill Tolk. I also represent Don Pettit's hometown newspaper in Silverton, Oregon. You talked a little bit about him being phenomenal with science, and he spoke before his launch about possibly doing Saturday afternoon science. If you got drawn into that, are there any specific experiments or thoughts or objectives that you personally would like to do if you got pulled into it?
I think if I'm fortunate enough to get pulled into Don's experiments, I'm in good shape, and I don't think in my wildest dreams I could come up with the ideas that Don has. So I'm going to take advantage of the 2 months that I have with Don, and if I can be the person handing him tools or things that he can use, for me that would be a bonus, and I'm hoping I can learn a lot from him that I can use for the second half of my expedition. Don is he's phenomenal, and he's got a lot of great ideas, so I think I'm going to piggyback on him for a while.
Good afternoon. I'm Pedro Rojas. I'm with Univision News, and I just wanted to ask you, what is it like to go to Russia? It's going to be a whole different time zone. How you prepare for that, and how many days would you guys be there before you launch from Russia?
It's always great going to Russia. It's a wonderful place. They have a great training program. So I'll get to Russia probably around the 25th of February, so a little over a month before we actually launch. We'll take our final exams and things like that. So I'll have a long opportunity to get acclimated and to the time differences. The biggest challenge is that I speak a little bit of Spanish. I'm trying to learn my Russian. I'll have some interviews later in Spanish, so it's always a challenge trying to think of what language I need to speak in. So bear with me, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, Jim over at NBC again to follow up on some very good points. You're training now for a 6-month flight. You started out in a 2-week flight. Can you talk about the difference in the training for a short and a long flight, and add one more thing? Suppose if you're going to do an analog on the station and you were asked to do a 500-day flight, like was recently done at the IBMP in Moscow, but in space, how much more different would your preparation be for 500 days in orbit? And especially people who've been there 500 days or on several different flights, but all together, how much different would that be? Joe?
Well, I'll start with the training part. When you train for a shuttle flight, you have 2 weeks, and the mission is very well thought out. You know what the objectives are, so in a little over a year, we can prepare for that. And when you train for a 6-month mission, there's a lot more you need to learn because there's so many more unknowns that could happen, either with things malfunctioning or just the timing of when visiting vehicles, for example, might come up. So you really need to be prepared for a lot more than you do with the shuttle flight. And if you start looking at the 500-day mission, I think the training in terms of the systems for the space station would be fairly similar. But at that point, I think the psychological training might be different if you're looking at 500 days on the space station. I know Sergei, he spent some time on a kind of a long duration analog in Russia. And Gennady, I don't know if you have any words you want to say on spending 500 days in space.
No, for me, Joe is quite right. Medical preparation and psychological preparation would be the most important for this pretty long duration flight. For me, I have 3 flights, and it seems to me I have a good experience, but it's not enough to have a good experience. It seems to me it's much better to use this experience well. And I have 3 flights that I know how to do it. But it seems to me it's a big problem for us, medical preparation, and to be ready.
You were at IBMP for one of the 110-day flight? Were you in a test in the... Was Sergei in yeah. So Sergei, you did a ground test?
Earlier. I took part in experiment, not much. But it was maybe more than 10 years ago. We prepare the SM module life support system. But it was a short expedition. There are two expeditions. One was about 1 month, and the other, it was a short expedition and I was a member of this short expedition, 10 days. It was in not far from Star City. It was a mock-up, and it was a very interesting experiment and a lot of practice work, a lot of practice job for life support system. And of course, the psychological questions were there. And I think, as concerned the so long expedition, 500 days, it is important for this expedition is psychological condition of everybody, and psychological condition the mission control center. And of course, the connection between these teams, because of, I think, the radio connection will use not so often, and use long period. Yes.
Psychological aspect is more important for long duration flight, especially when we have international crew, different traditions, customs, mentality. That is why we have been preparing for a long time to understand each other, to get along. It helps us on the ground. Yes.
Carrie Feibel, Houston Public Radio. Could you follow up, Joe, as well, and tell us, you're going from a 2-week flight to a 6-month. What is the psychological training? What are the things that teach you? I think listeners would really be interested in learning about that.
We don't get a lot, you might be surprised, we don't get a lot of psychological training. Maybe that's good. And we do spend a lot of time together as a crew, which has been really great. And we're very fortunate to have some very experienced crew members on our flight that we can use their experience, before we go and even while we're up there. I've had a couple of opportunities, like Nicole said, working in the Bahamas. I was in a pretty remote environment for about 1.5 years. So I've had some experience, not quite like this. But if the 2 weeks that I had were any indication, I think the 6 months are going to fly by, and it's going to be a good time. And talking to the folks that have recently returned, the 6 months is not. It goes by a lot faster than you imagine. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a good time. And for the record, if you need somebody for 500 days, you can put me on the list.
Go ahead. Sure.
Another question. What is your confidence in Soyuz operations given the problems in the Russian space program with launching last year?
Commander.
Today we have no chance for 2 reasons. Because Soyuz, this is the most dependable spacecraft for the last 40 years. And currently this is only one space vehicle to bring up and to bring down crew, to provide crew rotation. As you mentioned, we had no problem with Soyuz. We had problem with Progress and Rocket. But as you know, the launch of the Expedition 29 was postponed unless our management launched another Progress. And currently all problems are resolved, and we are sure no problem is expected.
I agree with Gennady, and there was a very thorough investigation that went on, and I know NASA was involved in looking at the results, and everybody is very comfortable with it. We've had a couple of successful launches, so I'm very confident, and there is a lot of redundancy in the vehicle, and there's a lot that these guys can do as the commander and the flight engineer, that if they need to take over manually, they can do that. So I feel very confident, and we're ready for a good ride.
Okay, with that, we're going to switch over to the phone bridge where we have 3 reporters awaiting with questions. We'll start with Anna Kaching with Harvard.
Yes, hello. My first question is, missions to Mars. Is it your hope that when they have as international the crew?
Anna, I believe we're having some audio problems. You can maybe try to repeat the question.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, much clearer.
Great. Joe, you know that children watching your mission are going to be having their own dreams about their missions to Mars in the future. Is it your hope that when they launch to Mars that they have as international crew as you have now? And by way of follow-up to Gennady and Sergei, I know that cosmonauts, while in orbit at space station, take the time to speak to children in Russia. Could you take this opportunity to speak to children here in the States and tell them about why you value international space, cooperation in space exploration? Thank you.
Yeah, I think for us to go back to Mars and things even more complicated than that, they are going to be international endeavors. And just like within the U.S. NASA astronaut office, we try to have a diverse group of astronauts, and I think it would be just as valuable, if not more, having a diverse group of astronauts, cosmonauts, because we all have different skill sets. They learn a lot on the Russian side that we don't. We have different systems, and the more that you can have this kind of collective understanding of what's going on, it only helps the mission. So I would envision those kids that are sitting in the classroom today and hope to go to Mars, don't be surprised if you're going to do that with some Russian colleagues, and you'll have a great time, and I wish you the best, and I wish I could go with you.
And Sergei and Gennady, could you speak to American children about why you value international cooperation in space exploration?
Because space flight are very risky and very expensive enterprise, it seems to me it's much easier to explore the space by doing this with our partners. It's much easier. We can complement, we can supplement each other. I mean, our technologies, our experience, and our space vehicles. And it seems to me in the future it will be much better to explore space together, especially when we're speaking about long duration flight, I mean Moon, Mars, and then beyond.
Я бы хотел отметить, что, видимо, человечество так устроено, что, покидая Землю, мы уже, возможно, не столь сильно различаем национальности или принадлежности к стране.
I would like to observe that once we leave the Earth, we don't notice our differences very much any longer, neither national nor ethnic or other identity differences.
Я думаю, если на планете Марс будут марсиане или на другой планете будут свои жители и будут встречать космонавтов, то, соответственно, они будут встречать представителей Земли.
And if there are any other inhabitants, let's say the Martians or some other inhabitants of other planets, once they greet astronauts and cosmonauts, they'll be greeting us as Earth inhabitants.
И в этом смысле, конечно, взаимодействие между собой, допустим, перед полетом, уже будет, то есть будет сформирована одна команда, которая будет представлять просто планету Земля. Я так считаю.
And I believe that the relationship that we will have, and of course that will be formed before flight, would be one single unified team which will represent planet Earth. At least this is my view.
Okay, with that we'll go to Joanna Carver with Metal News Service.
Hello, I have a question for all three of the crew, and I'd like to know, Joe, in particular, you said that you'd want to go, you'd sign up to be on a 500-day mission, but would any of you want to go to another planet or even another solar system?
Yes.
Okay.
Most definitely. That's always been a dream of mine, and to have that opportunity, that's one of the easiest questions I'll get all day. I would love to do it.
No doubt, I'm ready to move.
Я, конечно, безусловно готов, но было бы интересно еще отрепетировать такой длительный полет, например, используя планету Луна, слетать на Луну, побыть там дней 450, ну и обратно.
I'm certainly ready, but would be nice to simulate such an interesting flight and a mission like that, and to try it out on the planet Moon and spend about 450 days there.
Okay, moving on to our next reporter, Mike Wall with Space.com.
Okay, hi guys. This is just for all of you guys. So yeah, you're going to miss Dragon's arrival there by about a month and a half. Do any of you wish that maybe you could be up there when that actually gets up there and just to be a part of that historic arrival?
I think we all would love to be part of that, but it's going to be neat to see it from the ground, to see how it behaves relative to how we have trained, and hopefully during our increment we'll have an opportunity to also have one of those visit us. So it's always fun to be part of a historic moment, but just to be part of the entire training team to see how it goes, how it relates to our training, and then taking that to make our experience that much better will be just fine with us.
Okay, with that, we'll return back here to the Johnson Space Center for any remaining follow-up questions. Okay, seeing none, we'll wrap up this briefing. For more information on this crew and their mission, please visit our website at www.nasa.gov/station. Thank you.